My mom installed a hidden camera at the dacha to deter thieves, but I forgot to warn my mother-in-law. She came over the weekend to weed the garden beds. On Monday, I opened the recording and froze. Holding back my trembling, I called my husband and said just one thing: "Your mother is a monster." Before we continue, where are you from and how old are you? Enjoy listening. My mom often repeated a simple idea. A peaceful life depends on paying attention to the little things. A lock without oil jams. A path without gravel turns to mud. And relationships without boundaries slide into endless resentment. Back then, her words seemed like practical wisdom, useful only for the dacha. It turned out they applied to everything: the house, the people, and the line that even the closest ones shouldn't cross. The dacha came from my parents. A low house, a porch with a step that always sank in spring, 2 strawberry beds, a row of currants, an apple tree with a crooked top, an old bird feeder hung on the wall next to a small chicken coop. We couldn't come every week, but each trip restored a sense of order. My husband, Igor, worked in the city, often staying late. I was busy too: projects, reports, endless calls. We went to the dacha to catch our breath. My mom, Tatiana Vasilyevna, came more often. She had her own rhythm: wake up early, put the kettle on, check the chickens, walk the beds. She treated the plot like a living thing. She noticed where the soil was dry, where ants were creeping, where weeds were spreading. Her hands remembered every hole, every bush. My mother-in-law, Lydia Petrovna, had a different rhythm. She'd show up unannounced, like an inspector. She surveyed the yard as if it were a factory she owned. Her instructions came without pause. The strawberries needed different covering. The chicken feed was too cheap. The path was sprinkled with the wrong sand. She didn't raise her voice, but each remark carried a mocking edge, testing how much patience you had left. Igor, used to her commanding tone since childhood, tried to smooth things over, often turning it into a joke. "Mom's used to doing everything herself," he'd say. "She doesn't know any other way." In his memory, Lydia Petrovna was the woman who single-handedly kept the house running without asking for help. That image overshadowed everything else. That winter, rumors of thefts spread in nearby villages. Tools were stolen, pumps were taken, someone even lost a lawnmower. My mom said calmly, "A camera isn't for show, it's for peace of mind. You'll know what's happening and won't worry yourself sick." We installed a small black box under the eaves. The lens covered the gate, the front door, part of the yard, and the chicken coop. We set it to record to a card with access from the phone. I knew it was there and checked the app a couple of times at first, watching Mom walk across the yard with a bucket. Then I got used to it and barely looked. If everything was fine, why bring it up? I never got around to telling my mother-in-law about the camera, not because I wanted to hide it, but because it simply slipped my mind. Lydia Petrovna usually dismissed our technical gadgets as city nonsense, calling them science-like toys. I didn't want to make a fuss over something she'd likely ignore. Everything unraveled during what seemed like an ordinary weekend. Igor suggested staying in the city. He was wrapping up a work quarter, and I had meetings scheduled. Mom mentioned she'd head to the dacha alone to check if the garlic had frozen. On Saturday evening, Igor casually said his mother planned to stop by the dacha to weed the beds and unload some chicken feed. It sounded neutral, no hidden agenda. "Let her come," I replied. Monday began like any other day. Around 10 a.m., I opened the app connected to the camera without much expectation. The familiar view of the yard, the chicken coop door, and the path to the house appeared on the screen. The timeline showed a long recording from Saturday through Sunday evening, along with shorter clips from the night. I scrolled to midday and saw Lydia Petrovna enter the frame. Her movements were sharp, her shoulders hunched forward. She tossed her bag onto the bench as though it had offended her. She marched to the chicken coop, yanked the latch, and flung the door open. Light spilled over the chickens. She set down a bowl, dumped in the feed, then deliberately smeared the grain across the ground with her foot. A chicken that ventured too close was pushed away. Every gesture radiated disgust, as though she'd been forced to handle filth. A wave of nausea rose in my chest, not from physical cruelty, but from intent. Someone who comes to help doesn't scatter feed to create chaos. I rewound and fast-forwarded through the footage. The next clip showed her in the garden. Lydia Petrovna grabbed a hoe, but instead of weeding, she began pulling up neatly planted rows. Bushes flew out of the soil, clouds of earth scattered, leaves snapped. Her hands moved quickly, precisely, too precise for random destruction. No weeds hindered her progress because her goal wasn't to weed, it was to obliterate. At the end, she smoothed the soil with her foot, erasing all traces of her actions. Then Marfa Nikitichna, our neighbor, appeared in the frame, stocky, wearing a headscarf and rubber boots. News traveled faster through her than anyone else in the village. A sly smile played on her lips as she carried a bucket. They stood by the fence, their faces and gestures partially captured by the lens. Lydia Petrovna talked animatedly, her expressions sharp, her cheekbones tight, her lips curled into a scornful smirk. Marfa nodded, hummed occasionally, and clucked her tongue. At one point, Lydia Petrovna waved broadly toward the house, as if declaring, "We know their kind." My stomach churned. Gossip at the fence could weaken even the sturdiest home. Village life thrived on rumors, which stuck in people's memories as vividly as real events. But it didn't end there. A couple of hours later, an unfamiliar woman approached the gate. Tall hair tied back, light coat, thin heels. Lydia Petrovna opened the gate and led her to the house. They came into view closer. My mother-in-law gestured toward the porch, touched the railing, and walked to the door, as if giving a tour. The woman followed, assessing every step. They entered the house, leaving the camera outside. 20 minutes later, they emerged. The woman's coat was now draped over a chair, the way a homeowner might do it, not a guest. Lydia Petrovna pointed to the bedroom window, spreading her hands, her face glowing with smug confidence. They moved to the greenhouse, stood there for a long time, her hands sketching plans in the air. The woman nodded, laughed. I rewound twice, then a third time to be sure. This wasn't my imagination. It was a future owner being shown the property. My throat went dry. I couldn't sit still. I stood, went to the kitchen, lifted a glass, but water didn't help. A thought buzzed in my head like a fly against glass. Why? Why like this? No past grievance explains such malice. Even if she didn't like me, even if my lifestyle annoyed her, bringing another woman to our house, showing her the bedroom, promising her a place in my husband's life, this wasn't dislike. It was an attempt to destroy. I returned to the laptop, fast-forwarded. Marfa appeared again, approaching the second guest. They exchanged phrases readable by their smiles. Lydia Petrovna tapped the porch post and patted the woman's shoulder like a mentor, proud of a student's work. Then they dispersed. Dusk settled over the yard, the camera switching to night mode. I closed the laptop and looked out the window. The world outside hadn't changed. Same yard, same trees, same ribbon of road. Only I was changing. Igor answered on the first ring. "Hey," he said in his usual tone, "I was just thinking about you." "You're monster," I said aloud. No shame accompanied the words. Inside, it felt quieter. A pause stretched on his end, office noise fading. "Why?" he asked. I replied, "Come home tonight. I won't explain over the phone. You need to see." Time dragged until evening. I pretended to work, opened documents, made notes, sent emails. Mom called, asked how things were. I answered evenly, not wanting to burden her too soon. She sensed my hesitation but didn't push, saying only, "I'm here." Those two words built an invisible wall around me. Igor came home with a tired face, caught between defending his mother and fearing what might shatter his old image of her. We sat side by side. I played the recording. He watched silently. At one point, he straightened, leaned closer to the screen as if distance could alter the meaning. When the stranger entered the house, he pulled back, leaned against the wall, and lowered his head. When Lydia Petrovna's voice declared, "My son will be divorced soon," silence filled the room. He covered his face with his hands, sitting motionless for a few seconds. Then he stood, walked to the kitchen, poured water, drank it in one gulp, returned, and said, "Rewind." He watched the clips on repeat, searching for any error that might have slipped through. There was none. "I don't recognize her," he finally muttered. "Or rather, I don't want to. I saw something else in her. It doesn't fit in my head." "It doesn't fit in mine either," I replied. "But facts outweigh feelings. What do we do?" he asked. "We go to her," he answered himself. The drive to Lydia Petrovna's apartment took 40 minutes. He didn't crack a single joke or soften his tone. His grip on the wheel was too tight, as if sheer force could alter what lay ahead. I stayed silent. Extra words in moments like these only tilt the balance toward weakness. She opened the door immediately. "Come in," she said, heading straight for the kettle. "So nice you came. I wanted to talk about the chicken feed. It's too basic. You need to switch." Igor walked in without taking off his shoes, just as he did as a kid when urgency consumed him. I opened the tablet, played the video, and set it on the table. Lydia Petrovna glanced at the screen, then at us, then back at the screen. Her face remained almost still, save for her lips thinning. "What's this?" she asked evenly. "The camera at the dacha," I replied, "the one we installed for thieves." "Scammers," she snapped. "They'll edit anything now, stick on a face, add sound. I saw it on TV." She exploded, her words sharp as knives. "Ungrateful, insolent, always against me. You're her puppet, son. I gave my whole life for you, and now this? You brought a stranger into our house?" Igor raised his voice. "That's not care." "You can't explain it as care." "I wanted better for you," she shouted. "A worthy wife who understands family and work, not this one." He raised his hand, halting her tirade. His eyes hardened. "Don't you dare insult my wife, not in my presence." It sounded unfamiliar. He used to deflect with humor. Now he drew a line. It threw her off. "You don't value me. You don't need me." We left without an admission of guilt. The night passed sleeplessly. Igor paced the room, stopping by the window before resuming. At dawn, he sat on the edge of the bed and said, "I'm sorry I made you put up with her. We're in this together." "As long as we row in the same direction," I replied. He nodded, his gaze shedding its blindness, gaining the weight of someone who sees beyond what they wish to see. The next days dragged heavily. Lydia Petrovna didn't call, or when she did, she acted as though nothing had happened. Neighbor Marfa intercepted me at the gate, attempting casual chatter. "I saw the recording," I said. She faltered, pursed her lips, then began justifying herself. "It was just old folks' talk. No one meant to offend." My response was curt and firm. "You did offend enough. The village has enough memory to understand the weight of simple words." Midweek, Mom arrived. We sat in the kitchen, and I told her everything without holding back. She listened silently, then spoke slowly. The camera came in handy. Do you know why I insisted on it? I felt there was an invisible path in that house where bad thoughts walked. Together, we made a plan. No hysterics, no theatrics. Visit the closest neighbors who'd listened to Lydia Petrovna. Show clips of her trampling the beds and leading the stranger. Don't accuse, just present facts. Discuss with Igor the steps he's ready to take. Have another personal talk with his mother, not to convince her, but to set boundaries. The dacha keys stay with us and Mom only. The visits took 2 evenings. The houses smelled of soup, cats, and dusty rugs. People were surprised, silent, apologizing indirectly as villagers do, not with words but with a new tone. Some dared say, "Lydia's been overstepping for a while, but we thought it was your family's business. We didn't interfere." I nodded. You don't meddle in another's family. But this wasn't internal anymore. It was about strangers' boots in our home. Igor put his phone on silent when Lydia Petrovna called every morning, listing grievances. He texted her, "We're not cutting contact. We're changing the format. No insults. The dacha is our territory. Entry by agreement." She replied with a long text, a familiar mix of pain and accusations. There was no strength to scroll through it. I suggested not responding. He agreed. A week later, a knock came at the gate. It was the woman from the recording, wearing a different coat but with the same confident gait. She smiled like greeting old friends and said, "Hello, I'm Natalia. Lydia Petrovna asked me to talk. May I?" Pretending I didn't recognize her would have been silly. I opened the gate wider, keeping my voice calm. "Come to the porch. I won't invite you inside. Let's skip the extra gestures." She faltered, but didn't back down. "I didn't want trouble," she began. "Lydia said you and Igor were doing badly, practically on the verge of divorce." That help was needed. Help for whom? I asked quietly. Her herself or Igor, whom she planned to marry off to you without his knowledge? Natalia lowered her eyes. For a second, irritation flashed, not at herself, but at the situation that hadn't panned out. "I thought," she said, "if things weren't working out, I could build a life for him. Lydia said you couldn't manage the household, that your personality was difficult. I believed her." "And entering someone's home uninvited is normal?" I asked. "Our doors are open to everyone." She hesitated, words catching. Then she said, "I admit it looked wrong. I came to apologize to you, and I don't want to meddle in your marriage. I didn't know the full story." "You knew exactly what you wanted to know," I replied. "But if truth has come to you, that's not bad. For starters, don't come back without a call and an invitation, and don't discuss my family with others." She nodded, thanked me, and left slowly, like someone who'd unexpectedly seen their reflection. Mom watched from the window and remarked simply, "You didn't tear into her, and that's enough. She has to live too. Let her draw her own conclusions." By mid-spring, the house began to feel like a home again. We tilled the soil, pulled weeds, and patched a cracked board on the porch. Mom taught me to graft an apple tree, attaching a thin branch to the leaning trunk, like adding new life to the old, both taking root. In the evenings, we sat on the bench drinking tea. Igor came to the dacha more often, not as a guest, but as someone with tasks. His hands grew accustomed to the shovel, his shoulders to the weight of sacks, his thoughts to the quiet. He had a private talk with his mother, saying he wanted to speak one-on-one. He returned after 2 hours, sat on the steps, and stared at the grass for a long time. "She didn't admit anything," he said without looking up. "Said I betrayed the family, that you and I set up the camera to humiliate her. That Natalia is a good woman and I'll regret it. And what did you say? I asked. I said, I love you. That respecting you isn't betraying her. That our family has its own rules, and our doors open with a hello, not a shout. He realized he'd spoken to her as an adult, not a boy, for the first time. I hugged him. In that moment, our family stopped being a stage for others' expectations. Not everything fell into place right away. Lydia Petrovna would disappear, then reappear with new attempts. She tried calling Mom for a woman-to-woman talk, messaged neighbors, and told a cousin in the city that I'd turned her son against her. The noise buzzed around like a highway hum, annoying at first, then fading into the background. One day, closer to summer, Lydia Petrovna came to the dacha. She stopped at the gate and knocked. I went out. "Can I come in?" she asked flatly. "To talk." Her voice, usually sharp, sounded raspy today. "Come in," I said, leaving the door open just a crack. "We're not inviting you inside. Let's sit on the bench." She sat, hands on her knees like a schoolgirl being scolded. After a few minutes of silence, she spoke. "I never had friends, only work and my son. I was afraid of losing the one thing that stayed close. When you got married, it felt like he was taken from me." Her hands fluttered nervously, like a hen over a nest. "I'm not justifying myself, just saying how it is. Foolish, cruel, burning, and shameful." Her eyes showed no tears, only exhaustion. "Some words can't be taken back," I replied. "But actions can be stopped. The rest is up to you. No more gossip. No entering this house without an invitation. My marriage isn't up for discussion with anyone. Don't call Igor every hour like he's a dispatcher. And no more strange women in our home." She nodded and said quietly, "Tell him I—" "No," I interrupted. "Tell him yourself. Come back later. Give it time." A week later, they met in the city and walked for a long time. Igor returned changed. Not because he had his mother's support, but because he finally said everything he'd kept silent about for years. "I used to be afraid of upsetting you," he told her. "Now I'm afraid of upsetting myself." Those words didn't make him a cruel son. They made him an adult. Neighbors stopped glancing toward our yard. Marfa met my gaze at the well, wishing me a good day as she passed by for milk. Her kindness lacked sharpness, a small step forward. Natalia appeared at the market. Sometimes our eyes met, and she looked away. We passed each other without enmity or friendship, each on our own path. In autumn, as leaves began to turn, Lydia Petrovna came again. She brought a sack of potatoes, a jar of jam, and an old saw of Igor's father that had gone missing. She stood on the porch, shifting awkwardly, her face tight with the stiffness of someone unused to asking, but knowing they must. "I heard," she said hesitantly, "your roof is leaking in one spot. I can help find a roofer." "Thank you," Mom replied, cutting in before I could. "We have a roofer, but we appreciate your concern." Lydia Petrovna nodded, glanced at the yard, noticed the fresh paint on the chicken coop, and remarked, "It's bright. The chickens must be happy." No more, "Who's the real boss here?" No more, "You're not worthy of my son." Some nights I woke up and listened to the silence. It no longer rustled with old fears. There was the breath of the house, the faint creak of wood, the distant hum of a train. I'd rise, go to the window, and look out at the yard. In the dark, the bird feeder gleamed white. A drop glistened on the pipe. Sometimes I opened the camera app. The lens revealed an empty black yard. No events. The sight of emptiness was calming. No threat, just time flowing evenly. Winter arrived. The path to the house disappeared under snow, turning into a smooth drift. We shoveled together, occasionally calling a neighbor with a spade. Mom put on the kettle, gathered us at the table, and pulled a casserole from the oven. Igor brought firewood stacked under the shed since autumn. Conversations returned to simple things. That story became part of the past, not a scar worn with pride, but a lesson, not a trophy. Things with Lydia Petrovna didn't grow warmer than necessary. We didn't hug during holidays or call without reason, but when we met, we spoke evenly. A cautiousness lingered in her eyes.
She'd learned something too, not because she admitted guilt or changed, but because she faced a boundary she couldn't push through. Summer came into its own. Berries ripened on the bushes. Towels dried on the porch. We celebrated our anniversary, setting a table under the apple tree. Mom came. A neighbor stopped by. Igor and I stood together, recalling funny moments from our early years. We didn't invite Lydia Petrovna, not out of spite, but because a celebration is for those who rejoice with you. That evening, I went to the gate and saw her silhouette in the shadows. She held a bag, approached, and handed it over. "Jam," she said quietly, "if you'll take it." "Thank you," I replied. "We will." She nodded and left without stepping inside. It was her way of saying, "I'm still here," but without the destruction. I placed the jar on the table. Mom looked at me and nodded. Igor silently spooned the jam into a bowl. We ate and talked about other things. When people ask how it ended, I answer quietly. No one slammed doors hard enough to make the windows shake. No one filed complaints or shouted down the street. It ended with the quiet building of boundaries, the slow repair of broken respect, and a simple rule: our home doesn't house lies. It's where the kettle is put on in the evenings, not someone else's scripts. Where chickens are fed from the hand, not kicked. Where beds aren't torn up out of spite. Where doors open with a call, not a whim. And where truth doesn't whisper, it stands firm.